ATA is a nonpartisan nonprofit that advocates for civic engagement in Austin. And we host an almost monthly event. We have a policy agenda, and we have a couple of educational platforms. We are a member-based nonprofit, so we run on support from members and the public like you. If you're interested in joining for $25 a year, it really means a lot to us. You can go to austintech.org to join. I wanted to tell you about a couple of upcoming events that we have. This is our last event of the year. Our next event is January 22nd, and it will be about diplomacy in Texas and how tech and diplomacy tie in together. And then I am also putting together a team of people that want to go out and work on the point-in-time count. So to learn more about ATA, to sign up for our events, to become a member, go to austintech.org. Thank you for being here. I want to bring up Josh Baer. Josh Baer is the founder of ATA and also of Capital Factory, and he's going to offer some remarks on tech and transportation. So thank you, Josh, for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, so my first remarks on Austin transportation is, as usual, there's a million things going on in Austin, and so tonight there's also this happy hour for the Innovate Austin book launch from the Austin Technology Council happening over at Native Hostel, which is at 4th and 35th. So technically not very far away at all, but getting there from here to there right now in a car would take probably about 25 minutes. It's less than a mile, but you're moving inch by inch down 7th Street and then trying to get down 35 to get over there, and it would never happen. And it was at 6, and it's about 6:40 right now. I had to be here at 6:30. So I hopped on my scooter, and just for Randy, I wanted to make sure he saw that I wore my helmet, because I did. And I'm in a promotional video. It does light up, yeah. I'm in a promotional video for a Cap Metro about wearing helmets, so I have to actually wear mine. No, I really do. But hey, your head's valuable. But I rode my scooter over there. I was there in literally 5 minutes, just blown by all the cars. No problem. There are some challenges, driving it at night. You got to watch out for potholes. But it was. I never could have done that. And I went over there, and I was there for 20, 25 minutes. I hung out and saw a bunch of people, and then I was back here, ready for the thing to come back. And you never could have done that long ago. And honestly, I'm a diehard Austin City Limits music festival, every weekend of ACL ever. I've always gone and always been there, and I love it. And the worst part was always getting there, right? And ride sharing was kind of good, but then the ride sharing was a cluster. All the apps would crash and fail, and you'd call an app, call a car, and nobody could get there. And I thought last year was transformational with the scooters. They weren't perfect either, but it just really actually worked to pull the last mile off the dense area of that, and suddenly it was actually really easy to catch cars. It was really easy to do other things, and it made a huge difference. So this is not all meant to be just that scooters are the answer to everything or anything like that, but just that these things really are changing the way that we get around, and for me it has. And it's possible, there's ways around, alternatives to, the gridlock and a lot of things that are out there. But a lot of people would never try it or would never, consider these options. And I think we have to. So I try all the different things. And I'm enjoying that. But I've been also really enjoyed getting to know Randy, who is going to speak with us tonight. And Randy I grew up in Nashua, New Hampshire, outside of Boston. I've been in Austin for 20 years. Anybody been here longer than me? Wow, a lot. That's a lot for Austin, actually. Usually I'm the only one. All right, so I'm beat by 5 people, but normally I've been here the longest. But I grew up near where he came here almost from, indirectly from Boston, because he was working with the T. That was our Cap Metro up in Boston. And he spent some time in D.C., and now he's down here as the CEO of Cap Metro, which is our transportation authority. And that is, I mean, Randy's a not fun guy, but that does not look like a fun job, to be honest. I mean, it's like you are like deep, deep, deep in all of the politics and bullshit of everybody, and everybody probably can complain about. I mean, who likes traffic or like anything like that? Like he was going to Randy, like, man, the traffic is so awesome. Thank you. You know, it's like it's a tough job, and he has to deal with a lot of difficult people and a lot of different priorities. And I've been pretty impressed to see how he's navigated that and really tried to make people consider new options and different ways of looking at things. And so that's been really cool. And so I'm really glad that he took the time to come speak with us tonight. You know, a big part of the goal of the Austin Tech Alliance is to get the tech community more engaged in what's going on in our city. There's a lot of different organizations that focus on different areas and different purposes, and there's things to get you involved voting, you know, nationally and national policy. There's state level initiatives, but there really wasn't anything focused here on our city and what was happening here. And probably the spark of it that kind of kicked it off, not in any way the reason why we exist, but kind of the thing that kicked it off was when ride sharing got banned. And it just seemed, you know, really disruptive. It seemed like there was a lot of room for education and getting more involved, and it kind of caught a lot of people by surprise. And it made us realize that that maybe there was a role for the tech community to play in the city as well, and that, you know, this is part of that. So appreciate all of you coming out as well. So with that, I want to invite Randy up, and as part of thanking him, want to give you a small token of appreciation. We have here at Capital Factory, there's 4 floors of programming and activity, different things going on, and one floor is all painted red, white, and blue. This is the robot floor, in case you didn't notice. But that floor is the superhero floor, and it is where the U.S. Army and Air Force and DoD are. It's our Center for Defense Innovation. And they came here because they wanted the startup culture and the Austin culture to rub off on them. That was part of it. Like they don't have to wear uniforms here. That's like a big deal. And they were trying, you know, wanted to be more innovative and think differently and be more creative and move faster. And so they said when they came here, it was partly so that our culture would rub off on them. But we didn't really expect any of their culture to rub off on us. I am not wearing a uniform. But they actually, there are a lot of really great things that we've learned from them, and they have some really cool traditions in their culture. And one of them is this something called a challenge coin, which some of you may have seen us use, and I'm sure, Randy, you may have seen. Oh, he's running away. And so it's something that all the Army generals all have, and when they come and they visit, if they see typically someone that in the military that they want to recognize or honor, they'll present them with one of these coins, and occasionally they'll give it to a civilian as well. And so because we have all these Army generals come through, we've been super honored to get a bunch of these coins. And so we made a Capital Factory coin, and so it has the Capital Factory logo on one side. On the other side, it has basically that big blue robot, and it says the center of gravity for entrepreneurs in Texas, and on the bottom a slogan from many of the military coins that says presented for excellence. And usually I catch people off guard. They have no idea what this is, but I'm guessing from him rummaging through his bag that he's got one too. But so anyway, so I wanted to give you one of our coins. And apparently he's got one too. Yeah. And awesome. So you end up with like a collection. So now you'll have a Capital Factory coin.
And a Cap Metro coin.
And then we have a Cap Metro coin too.
Look at that.
So awesome.
Exchanging
There you go.
of the coins.
Awesome.
Of course, yours is bigger.
Oh, no comment. All right, so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Randy, because I am really excited to hear about these fully autonomous, underground, cedar pollen-powered buses that apparently are coming next week. So, Randy, tell us all about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it, man. That is I would say maybe the coolest challenge coin I have. I got like 100 of these probably, and that I don't have any with a robot on it. So that is really kind of cool. So Josh, thanks for the intro. Sarah, thanks for having me. There you go. More to come, hopefully. Thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I recognize some people in the room. Some of you probably heard my spiel before. I will try to not be overly repetitive, but there's parts of that. And then hopefully maybe there'll be a little interaction with, questions, comments, tell me what we don't know, what we're doing well, what we could do better. As Josh said quickly, everything in life is experiential, I've come to realize. And I had the opportunity to work in Boston and at the T. And the T moves about 1.2 million people a day. It's one of the biggest transit authorities in the country and the oldest infrastructure. So one of the things I've taken to this job, and it's an incredible opportunity. So while Josh says the job is difficult and there's some BS and some other stuff, sure, but I am beyond fortunate and I am really happy to have this opportunity. And consider it a privilege to have this position, and hopefully we'll have this position for a while. But I came out of Boston with the deep understanding of the importance of the customer and the importance of whatever we build, we got to be able to pay to maintain that infrastructure, because it's very clear what happens to any system when you don't look after it and it falls apart. It is bad, 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 and it's bad from a safety point of view, reliability point of view, and then the costs later are way more exponentially higher than just doing it right to begin with. So as we run our current system, I like to think the team is beyond focused on the customer, and we can talk a little bit about that. And as we look towards Project Connect, which we'll talk about, I think many people hopefully have heard that term and know some details about, we have to be financially cognizant of the investment we are making and what that will cost in the long term from a cost side, and more importantly, what the benefits will be if we do the investment right. So we can talk a little bit about that. So we start off, actually I'll do this first. I normally do a handheld, so then I could actually do I hand talk constantly, as my wife tells me. So there's a couple handouts as you came in the room. A little card like this, Project Connect. If you don't have one, there's some there. This here is a little brochure called Reaching Higher. I'm proud of what we do, and we're not going to not talk about the good stuff we do. And I think that is a problem in our industry, and Cap Metro probably felt like that with the rest of the industry, which is not bragging on itself. We should be bragging on ourselves. Government should be, it's okay for government to tell the residents that pay taxes the good that they get for those taxes. That is important, what we should do. It has to be factual, don't lie, but important to tell what you do. And so we're gonna do that, and we start doing more seat drops and more actual handouts to customers so they're aware. We're bombarded with information right now, I would say data right now, and it's very hard for anyone to pay attention to anything, right? And I won't even talk about Twitter or what goes on in DC, the distraction of all that stuff. I just meant even locally. This here is a handout about pickup, and maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's our on-demand service. So Josh mentioned ride hailing. I don't call it ride sharing. Ride sharing actually involves human beings sharing a ride. Ride hailing is I want to take a taxi and not talk to someone and not have to tip. Those are totally different things, so be cognizant of that. But this is our version of ride hailing, and it is being incredibly effective, and I see that as a major part of the future of transit. And then we'll talk a little bit about this map, which is one side regional, one side, if you will, more localized, and this is about Project Connect. So I just mentioned those handouts. Sarah has them. If anyone would want a copy as we go through it, just let her know. Okay, so with that said, let's talk about what good stuff has happened at Cap Metro. And I'd like to highlight this before we get into Project Connect. So when I came here, I heard this overwhelmingly, no one takes the bus. Okay, so that is very far from the truth. So the next time someone says no one takes the bus, and then they say, yeah, I was going down the street at 10:30 and no one's on the bus, say, well, how many people were on your local street at 10:30 at night? There's no one on the street either, right? Because it's 10:30 at night. So unless you're on Rainy Street, most streets are relatively quiet at 10:30 at night. I can promise you at PM rush hour, in the last 2 hours, our buses are incredibly full. And it shows. So we're at 13 straight months of ridership growth. Far as we can tell, and I've asked the APTA, where I used to work, the American Public Transportation Association, we're the only agency in the country that has had 13 straight months of ridership growth. We are up 37% on Metro Express year over year, 10% on Metro Rapid, which is our 801, 803 service, and 5.2% overall. One of the largest transit ridership growths in the entire country. By no means should ridership be the only metric you evaluate transit on, but it is an important metric from the point of view of demand. And it's no question that the demand for our services are growing, and I think that's why we need Project Connect to really do a significant investment. We did a K through 12 program that we had this debate back and forth when I first got here, talking to the school department, who had some pretty significant financial issues. We were spending a larger amount of effort to try to collect very reduced fares for kids. We just said, the kids are going on for free, and we're done with it, right? We're not broke. What are we trying to accomplish? We're trying to actually move people in the most equitable, community-based way. This did that. We've already done 2.5 million trips for K-12 students. And overwhelmingly, you know who the group I hear the most from? Parents that say, thank you, I have more independence because my kid, no more excuses, take the bus. And they're starting to learn what urban culture is all about. Just take the bus. Instead of mom and dad carting your butt around everywhere, take the bus yourself. And it creates a sense of freedom. And so I think that's working really well. I mentioned pickup. We have expansion zones. We've had 5 zones out there right now, and another one coming in Leander, I think it's next week, Jackie? I think is, right, 17th. So I'll give you a quick example of pickup, and so valuable that this is. We ran a bus in Manor that we averaged 8 to 9 customers a day. A bus, okay? A bus costs a lot of money, and environmentally, buses are no question an unbelievable way to deal with greenhouse gas emissions and make reduction in air pollution. They are not that case if there's no one on board. It's actually worse environmentally. So we went from carrying 8 to 9 people a day, and now we carry almost 85 to 90 a day using our pickup van service. So less cost for us, 85 to 90 people a day versus 8 or 9 people a day. That is the power of good microtransit planning integrated with trunk system. So I think you're going to see enormous amount of cities do microtransit zones that will drag people into big fixed trunk systems, and we can connect all parts of our community for a much lower cost. A 40-foot bus does not, a tool is not a tool is not a tool. We have to use the right tool for each application. And we have the data. So this runs on Via. Via is the software. It is Uber. It is Lyft. It's the same algorithm and technology. And we get to actually use it for community connectivity. So I probably shouldn't make, if anyone from Uber or Lyft, I generally apologize to you for making this joke, but I was at a thing a couple of weeks ago and someone talked about this, and I said, in all fairness, we're supposed to lose money every day, right? And I say this, my board chair goes, why do you keep saying this? But we're supposed to, because we're a community service, right? And then someone questions why we don't make money. I say, well, how much money did the fire department make last year? And people say, oh, I never thought about that way. Exactly. We're supposed to actually be business-like and do everything we can to efficiently lose money every day. Uber and Lyft, they just lose money every day. So that's my little joke. Come on, I'm a transit guy. Boom, boom, boom. They do have the right role some places to play as a partnership. In other places, they're a competitor, and we just be honest of what the value is right there. We've also been winning a lot of national awards, which we're really proud of as well. So, framing up a little bit, I think what Josh was getting into. You all know this. I've been here 18 months. A lot of you have been here longer than that. Some of you are newer. This place is booming. Like most of us will never see a boom time like this ever in our lives. And people say, oh, Austin's been booming for a long time. Not like this. This growth is unprecedented kind of growth. You could argue almost unhealthy to some extent. It's so rapid, and we're losing our ability to contain smart planning decisions by the day because it's the pace of development is happening faster than the pace of strategic planning. We're 2 million as a region now. We're going to be 4 million as a region. So 4 million is bigger, well, just about the same size as the greater Boston region. Boston's a little more complicated because it's the way it connects this Rhode Island to New Hampshire from an MSA point of view. But let's just call that in 2040, we're going to be equal to Boston. Well, Boston has 4 subway lines, 13 commuter rail lines, multiple light rail lines, a whole bunch of bus rapid transit, and a bus fleet that's 2.5 times the size of ours. And 4 interstates. We have MOPAC maxed out. We have 35 a disaster, and we have a commuter rail line that wasn't really even built perfectly to begin with. And a couple BRT light lines. That's what we got. And Boston is challenging to keep the job market growing because of mobility. Or we can be like LA, who didn't do anything for 20 or 30 years, and then had to figure out how to go do a referendum for $120 billion. We're at this tipping point in Austin, and we got to start realizing we are a big city, and we're going to be a big urban region, and we're going to have to actually act that way, and we need investments to deal with that. So, I thought the screen was here for a second, but you're both looking over both sides. So let's just talk quickly through this map. That'd be like a map with no traffic, I guess. So here's our local bus network. So I think we actually do a really good job on a daily basis for the bus network that we provide. Would I wish we do better on a lot of things? Of course. If someone has a bunch of cash, I'm ready to go do a lot more tomorrow. But for the resources we have, I think we do a really good job for our community. You know, we run a fleet of about 420 buses, 425 buses, and we're, on a lot of lines, we're actually maxed out, and on other lines, we're doing the best we can to fight through traffic and carry the many people as possible. But that is our network. This is the red line. You guys know the red line. I'm gonna be real honest, the red line is a really good community asset. It needs to continue to get better to get to what I think most people envision it to be. And for right, wrong, or different, it was built on the, I don't want to use the word cheap. That's the wrong word to use. It was built economically. That's a better political word. And I'm not a Monday morning quarterback because I wasn't here, so it's not my decision. But what happened? But we are not far from turning the red line into something that I think all of us would be more proud of. And that starts with our downtown station. So we're building a $35 million project downtown outside the Hilton right now. When that comes online, we are going to be able to really move trains in and out of downtown in a whole different way. We're also building that to have the capacity for a future green line if we end up doing that. But the parts of the red line that I think we need to be thinking about are, we need a better station at the Broadmoor Domain area. The Kramer Station location doesn't cut it. It's not the right place. Broadmoor, I don't know if people are really aware how big the development of Broadmoor is going to be across the street from the Domain, and all the development that is actually programmed for the Domain. Like, we're talking 3.5, I think, million square feet on the Domain side that's still not even built out yet. So we need a better station there. We're going to have a Major League Soccer team at a stadium that's going to be busier than just soccer games. We're going to need a station there. We got to think through that. So we're getting close, I think, to working with some partners to try to move those deals forward. I also think we got to be a little more thoughtful about how we run service. We're getting closer to 15-minute service. We're almost there, bi-directional. But how do we run later? How do we run more frequent? How do we run more on weekends? How do we drive land use policies around those stations and create more dense nodes? And how do we get businesses to partner into that? The green line is the potential commuter rail route out to Manor and then long-term to Elgin. The irony is this is the right-of-way that we own, and it's probably the least ready for massive transit investment. Not that it's not important. I think this is actually a line that long-term is really important for the region, and I think if land use is set up correctly, it could really shape the northeast and eastern part of Travis County to be much more transit dependent than most parts actually of western or central Travis County, if those things were programmed to work hand in hand. We own that right away. We run freight out there today. It's one of the only unique models that around the country that does that. And again, we're building downtown station to be integrated for both lines. Okay. The next line I want to talk about is the blue line. So the blue line is the airport. We'll just make it easy. Down Riverside, across the lake, not exactly sure where, but to make it easy, around the Trinity area, and over to Republic Square, and then potentially a branch up to the east side, up to ACC Highland. This is, I guess, a little bit what most people put together in 2014. I don't really, outside of trying to learn from what happened in 2014, I'll say it as clean as I can. I don't really care about 2014. It's in the past. All I care about is the future. Do the data, figure out what we should do, let's move it forward. Learn from the past, but not live in the past. And I know a lot of people in this community have been traumatized by previous transit elections, and I tell them all the time, I get that, deep breath, I'm your Dr. Phil, talk it out, move on. And that's the only way we can do this. We just gotta move on. Whatever happened in the past happened. But what's important to me about transit is stations and connecting lines together. And downtown has the ultimate connection, which is at the convention center. And if a new convention center is built, it even provides more opportunity for integration. But a blue line, red and green, all in one integrated station. That's how you start doing real transit right there. We can make a really big connectivity. That's when someone lives at Lakeline and works at Oracle and never thinks of getting in their car. That's when someone that lives in Montopolis and works down Republic Square area and never thinks of getting in a car, and it's when someone in Leander never thinks about going through the city or congestion on 35 and goes to the airport. Those kind of examples can happen so seamlessly on that kind of development. The Orange Line. There's no question this Orange Line is in my opinion, the most important thing we need to do. It is the main street of Central Texas. So if you care about congestion on Mopac and 35, the only chance that we have to make things better, north-south, is a new downtown spine, a mainline spine, and that's the Orange Line. It goes through the heart of everything that makes the economy here work, is the Orange Line. And we got to move way more people efficiently than we do today. And so when I talk about different elements of the Orange Line, most everyone goes, well, I don't want to take a lane for that. I don't want to think about that. So what we're going to have a hard discussion on the Orange Line is this. A friend of mine used to say to me, Randy, there's only two things in the universe people hate: change and the way things are. And it's true. So we're going to have to decide, do we hate the way it is more than the change? And everyone universally thinks the drag is already a mess. So do you want the drag to be a mess in 20 years? Yes or no? This stuff isn't that complicated. Really, when it's all said and done, it's not that complicated. Every other city has done it. It's not that complicated. So we have to figure this Orange Line piece out, and it is the main trunk to move the city. Republic Square, to me, needs to be our Grand Central. We need the blue and the orange connected at Republic Square, which is the heart of the employment center for a 4 million person future region, and think of the people that will be able to move via transit if we do that right. Another couple places that are important here too to think about would be a place like Crestview. Crestview, to me, has so much potential. We have lots that are starting to develop and then other lots that are abandoned warehouses. You think about what the red and orange line as a multi-line station could do to Crestview. You could turn Crestview into the new Saltillo, just like that. And even probably more so spread around. So we could really do some serious land use, tax-based valuation, mobility planning all together in a place like that. Tech Ridge, Slaughter, these need to be big regional transportation centers. We need to funnel people to a place like Tech Ridge. So I come out of a place like Boston. If you went to, like, say, Alewife Garage, for some people on the Red Line, that garage probably fits 35 to 4,000 spaces a day. And it's sold out by like 7 a.m. because everyone in that area of the suburbs goes there and takes the subway. And then there's 4 or 5 of those around the whole city. We need that kind of thinking where we're drawing people to regional hubs, getting on transit. And think of the volume of people we could carry on that Orange Line. And then quickly we have, what else did I put here? Oh, one of the models we're also looking at, that it's pretty hard to see on your model, on the screen, I apologize, is the Gold Line, which would be kind of a horseshoe from ACC Highland down the Convention Center, across probably 4th or 5th, give or take, and then up to the Triangle or North Lamar Transit Center. So we're just doing some evaluation to say, should the Blue Line come this way and the Gold go that way? We're just trying to do different scenario play on how all that would work. Okay, all the purple lines are Metro Rapid lines, and they are equivalent to our 801 or 803 today. You'll see a couple that are already 803, like Burnett and South Lamar. We need to run those better than we run today. We need better signal priority. We need better queue jumps. We need better bus stops. We need to run more frequent service. A whole bunch of stuff. Carve out every ounce of transit priority we could get, even if it's a quarter mile sometimes, makes a big difference of a minute or two in a block. We need to do better investment on Pleasant Valley. We need better investment on Manor Road. We need to be thinking better on our crosstown, which would connect east and west. And CARTS is building a new center in partnership with us towards Shady. So there is a huge amount of opportunity to increase our Metro Rapid service to our community. Neighborhood circulators, that's a nice way of saying pickup, or I think the future, and we're in a tech room, there's no question there's going to be small neighborhood autonomous shuttles. That will be, I don't know if that's going to happen in 4 years or it's going to happen in 18 years. It doesn't matter. Someday that will happen where there'll be a fleet of 5 to 8 person kind of shuttles going through a place like Terrytown or places like that where it's low density or difficult topography, picking people up and dropping them off at mobility centers. I'm not Nostradamus, but I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen. Parking rides. I wish we didn't have to have a world where we have as many parking rides, because that means, quite frankly, I think we'd have better land use planning where we'd have less need for parking rides. But we are where we are, and the growth in this region is not going to change that. If anything, it's accelerating faster, unfortunately, in some areas. We have good parking rides today. Our Lakeline parking rides example, we've already expanded and it's basically full. We need to do more parking rides to kind of a catchment basin, if you will, to get more people in the surrounding areas to not be on the roadways in the Austin core. And the only way to do that is give them really good transit service. So one I want to highlight there is Lakeline today pushes a lot of people on our commuter buses. And you saw earlier the ridership gain. We're almost at 100% capacity. We are basically, we're about 95% capacity right now on our commuter buses using MOPAC toll roads. We're at a point where we honestly almost don't know what to do next year. We don't have any more resources to really buy more buses and run them. And that's how busy that service is. And then we think it's going to continue to grow because the travel time savings is so great because of the toll lane, everyone wants to use it. Don't you think a lot of people in the Southwest don't want that same thing? Right? So the Southwest is bumper to bumper traffic. It's horrendous. And so, right, wrong, or indifferent, MOPAC South toll lane is moving forward. And we want to be part of that from how does transit gain the most value from that and how do we get the most amount of people on transit. So we're working really closely with CTRMA, the city, and others to think through somewhere around the Wildflower Center area, how would we do a really good park and ride to facilitate great toll access and do amazing commuter bus service from the south as well. If 35 can come together, we want to have great commuter bus service north and south 35, and we're also thinking things like out of Manor, how we'd run on 290 back in kind of a different way into town. We know we need to do more of that as well. So, I see some people in this room that have seen this before. You're transit people, you're urbanist people. We got a lot of work to do as a group to explain a basic concept of geometry to people. Not everyone gets this. I know it's hard to believe. If you drove a car and you only drive a car, it's amazing how you don't understand spatial relationships. It's strange to me because I don't really drive a car. But you either have like we have a rapid bus at peak period, we'll have over 100 people in it. Or you have 100 people in their own cars and that's 4 light cycles down Guad. It's that simple. So anytime someone says, how are we going to change this sort of stuff? We're not. Unless we do something different, right? So our board member said it really well the other day. The other day is probably the best commute you're ever going to have. We got to start being honest with people, right? If we don't do something different, your commute in 20 years, how can it get worse? It's just it's simple math. So it's not about 35 and what gets resolved there. It's your main roads like North Lamar, South Congress, places like that. We're either going to build up, we're going down, or we're doing the roadway different. That's it. We're not going to go and all of a sudden take out all the businesses to South Congress. We're not going to make North Lamar or Guad wider. So either we make the corridor work more efficiently, i.e. transit, or we're building underground, or we're building elevated and putting more roadway lanes. There is no other answer. So I think you probably all know that I think we need to move people more efficiently, and hopefully a lot of other people agree with that. So we've been doing a lot of community engagement. Jackie Nuremberg is our community relations manager. Some people know Jackie. She's been working quadruple time doing this. But one thing that I was committed to when I got here about a month after Code Next hit a delay button. Kind of my political terms here tonight. But I made a very big commitment to our team, our board, and I've said it publicly a lot of times. We are not going to get people saying that we didn't do a good process and we weren't transparent. So you can right, wrong, or disagree with the facts. For some reason, people want to disagree with facts. But we're just going to do this in an open, transparent way. We're going to engage as many people as possible, and we're just going to let the facts be what they are. So we are spending an enormous amount of time and resources to make sure we're doing as much as possible. And Jackie's already engaged over 22,000 people. We do this hand in glove with the city, which I think is an unbelievable collaborative process. We have a technical advisor committee. We have our Project Connect Ambassador Network, which used to be the MCAC, but now it involves a lot more people. We've done 4 joint work sessions between our board and the city council. We have another one, I think it's January 14th, I think it's the 14th. There'll be another one in March. There's another one, we're working on the date for May. I'm told those were not normal in the past. I can't overemphasize how this is a joint venture between Cap Metro and the city. Hand-in-glove leadership. City manager and I came here basically around the same time. We have an incredibly positive, collaborative relationship. Gina Fiandaca, who's the ACM of mobility, she also comes from Boston. I spent probably 2 hours with her today alone. She's been a fantastic addition to the team. Our team, we brought in some people that are used to doing this in some other cities. It really is an awesome collaborative effort. We took a group of people to the following cities you'll see below there to do some due diligence. People like the mayor, council members, some board members, some big business leaders, to see what went right and what went wrong in some big cities. And again, LA, 120 billion, or Seattle, how they're doing things right or wrong there, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that was a really important step as well. A couple peer cities that we should talk about quickly. In 2016, the city of Austin passed the mobility bond for $720 million. And at the time, it was the biggest thing that this city has ever done from an investment portfolio. That same day, STB3 in Seattle went forward 54 billion. So 27 in local, 54 billion total. I hear a lot of people, especially people in the tech community, that like to compare ourselves to Seattle. I think culturally, we do have a lot of similarities to Seattle. I think our peers are Seattle, Denver, Minneapolis. I don't think our peers are Houston and Dallas. I think we're more aligned with Seattle, Denver, and Minneapolis. Well, if you look at the numbers they're spending not because it's like fun to spend money, they're spending money because they know that these are investments for their economy in the future. So we're not LA. LA is like the 5th largest economy on the planet by themselves, right? So we don't need 120 billion. Quite frankly, we don't need 54. I don't know what I'd spend $54 billion on. But the point is, we need billions. And we got to stop talking about $1 billion being a lot of money. And I know that's easy for me to say, and people say, how does this guy talk like that? Well, maybe it's because I came out of Boston and I used to have a budget over $1 billion myself in capital. We got to acknowledge we're a big city, and big cities have to spend a lot of money to move people. And so I think it's important when we see these peers that we can learn from them about what investments truly are. We also got to get people that experientially don't live in transit-rich environments to understand that transit is way more than actually vehicles moving people. It's really about placemaking and urban planning via transportation. So I love this picture of Union Station in Denver. So Union Station area in Denver went from like kind of an old track kind of area with a hotel kind of, or Union Station kind of falling apart, to an unbelievable, beautiful hotel, billions of dollars of valuation around it, an amazing transportation hub. The piece on the left is Houston and just integration of art into all the actual stops. Think of what we could do in a community that really prides itself on being a creative community. What we could do to reflect, Mexican-American history. What we could do to reflect tech community. What we could do to reflect the conservation history out of here. What we could do to reflect the state capital on art and placemaking. And all that could bring. Why can't we have farmers markets at big transit centers? That's what I'm used to. I used to leave my office in Boston, I'd walk to North Station, I'd stop, I'd pick up a bag of stuff, and I'd get on the train. All the time. When I lived in DC, I'd walk by Foggy Bottom and I'd come out of the subway station, up the escalator, I'd hit a farmer's market, I'd walk a couple blocks home. Why can't we do that stuff? There's no reason not to, right? And so Senator Watson one day at a big speech said, and I was sitting in the room watching him because he's a much better speaker obviously than I am, said, what is it that all these cities, he named all these cities, Denver and Seattle, and he named a bunch, are doing so wrong, but we're doing so right on transportation? And then he looked and he said, we're not. They're doing it right, and we're not doing it right. And they are trying to build their future. So all this stuff, I think we just got to get more and more people to understand the value of transit is not just moving people. It's creating a much more livable community that we all want to be part of. So last thing I think I want to highlight here a little bit is, because we're in the tech brain of Austin, is I don't think people realize how tech-centric transit is. There's a lot of people that don't use transit that go, yeah, transit's just like the old bus shows up and people walk on a bus and they get off somewhere. Okay. The bus itself is a supercomputer borderline. The volume of information and systems coming off a modern-day bus would blow most people's mind away, let alone electrification. So our first electric buses will be on the street in next month. People talk about electric car. Think about this technology that you got to drive an electric bus, right? Super, super complicated stuff. The automation to charge that infrastructure, which is much more sophisticated than the average car. Autonomous buses, Josh mentioned that. Are they coming? There's no question. Are they coming in a couple of years? I have no idea. I doubt a couple of years. If I'm on this planet when level 5 happens, I either lived a long time or Moore's Law quadrupled fast. But I don't think we're going to be in a level 5 world anytime in the near future. But we are going to be in a level 4 world, I think, probably faster than many people realize. I think transit has the opportunity to be automated much more rapidly than individual car users for 2 reasons. One, we are limited production, so limited manufacturers make equipment, so they can actually specialize that. And most importantly, most of our stuff is fixed route infrastructure. So either it's the route itself is fixed, even if it's not dedicated infrastructure, it's fixed. So therefore, you could do everything from sensors to help guide those vehicles and the AI behind that, or it's fixed infrastructure. And when you have fixed infrastructure, you control your right-of-way and the automation level's higher. The part that I think is coming the fastest, though, is the automation in what we would call depot operations. So behind the curtain, in our garages, in our yards, that stuff is rapidly. So 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, the first bus went into full automated operation in an underground depot in Paris. Literally on the street, drove itself with no one on, circular down to 4 layers, backed it in and parked itself and started charging. That's how we got to start. So I want staff out in the field. I don't want vehicles with no staff on them. Maybe that'll happen 100 years from now. I want staff on the vehicles for a variety of reasons. Safety, security, collecting a fare, customer service, people with different abilities, all those things. We're a customer-centric organization, but we definitely want to do everything we can to use technology to make our operating budgets as efficient as possible, not to make money, to spend more money on the street for our customers. These little circulator pieces, these are fun. People are doing a lot around the country. This is not transit to move tons of people, but these are going to be these first mile, last mile, maybe campus little circulators. I see a big future of those in very specific applications. Let's talk trains for a second. The modern day train is crazy sophisticated, like unbelievable. And I can say that because the trains I had to look after in Boston were very unsophisticated. When I left Boston, the Red Line fleet that's just being replaced now was brought into service in 1968, 1969 without an overhaul. There's a lot of duct tape up there. And it's amazing what the maintenance staff does. But what we could do with modern day rail if we're willing to think that way, so on one side, hydrogen. Hydrogen will be the fuel source of the future, but I think we're far from that. We have some bus operations around the country that are actually doing for some hydrogen testing already. Oakland's helping lead that. A California agency just bought its first order for a hydrogen train 2 weeks ago, and Toronto's doing some stuff with hydrogen, and there's some stuff going on in Europe. So crawl, walk, run, our industry, hydrogen will get there one day, but electrification is that bridge for certain. And there's a lot of cool stuff going on transit relative to even how electrification works on light rail. So you look at this right away. Think of this, where your rail is set. To me, that is very innovative, where you're dealing with water management through your right-of-way, which water management in our community is a big deal. So what would it look like if part of North Lamar looked like that, or part of Riverside looked like that? And how we would manage water inside the transit system. Pretty cool. What would it look like to not have a catenary? Right? So there's multiple agencies around the world right now that are doing first ever like battery/inductive charge system where you have no, what we would call overhead OCS, overhead catenary system. What would it look like to do that? Is it worth an extra bit of capital to do that and not have the operating expense of dealing with all the maintenance of the wires, and more importantly, the look and feel of all the wires? Something we're looking at. What would it look at from a safety point of view to do that? You know, there's all those elements. We are blessed with one thing, an amazing environment here to do stuff that other people can't do. You couldn't dream of doing that in Boston, because today it's 34 degrees and it snowed yesterday. Our worst day is hot. It means we cool it more, right? So outside of a really good track to make sure you don't have bends and stuff like that and kinks, we could do things that other cities can't do. The other thing that we got the value of is we don't have a lot of built infrastructure. So yes, would have been great if the 2000 referendum passed and we already have partially a built-out rail system and maybe we're building a bunch of extensions. Clearly. It didn't happen. Was it good or bad that 14 happened? I don't know. In some ways it'd be good because we'd have maybe be done, almost done with something. Maybe it'd be really bad because maybe it wasn't the right thing to do. I don't know. What we do have though is pretty much a blank slate. So whatever we're gonna do, we should build our system to be, very tech word, future-proof as possible. And that doesn't mean steel wheel versus rubber tire. It means thinking about the long-term operational dynamic of those vehicles. And what is the O&M of that? How is the whole system be scalable? And that's one of the things we're concentrating on. I'll give you a quick little story here, and I think I'm getting close to the end. I've been very fortunate in previous jobs to travel to tons of transit systems all over the world. And I've been to Singapore a few times. I've done a fair amount of work in Hong Kong and other places. So a lot of these places run fully automated transit systems. Now these are fixed guideway, heavy rail-based systems where very much like an airport mover where you have a double door, double platform screen door so no one can get in the right-of-way. But the one thing is this picture in Singapore. So this is from what they call the Circle line. It's one of their lines. And they call it a medium capacity line because they only move like 350,000 a day on that line. 3 times what we move in our whole transit system, one of their medium capacity lines. So what I love about this system is, first of all, it's an underground depot. The largest underground depot in the world. So they have high-rises built all over a rail depot. Think of the land use management when it comes to that. And no, we're not going to do that here because that's billions and billions we don't have. But it's a fully automated system. It uses sensors throughout the entire right-of-way and infrastructure to constantly measure that vehicle. Everything from heat on a ball bearing on a wheel to how the interaction of the track is to vehicle dynamics. It goes into kind of an AI-generated maintenance system. And so behind this scene, there is what I would close to call an Amazon warehouse style, where everything is an automated inventory management system, where robots go and pick all of the different products. So if this vehicle had a door failure and it needed 3 new parts, those machines are behind me. They're going, picking out all the stuff, comes out in a conveyor belt. The maintenance techs know exactly what's happened. This train, after it's run, is guided into the right track. And the workers go over with the parts already picked out and start replacing that to get it back into service. That's the kind of stuff that I talk about future-proof. If we're going to build an orange and blue line, our maintenance facility needs to be, and they're doing that 5 years ago. We are not going to build, if we go rail, we can't be building what Dallas built 10 years, 15 years ago. Sure, what they built was great. We need to build the most sophisticated system possible. So in 2035 and 2040, it's still really up to date. And that's what we got to be thinking about. So it's much more than the wheel. It's much more than where the stations are. It's the entire operation, how it comes together. We also got to think more about fair payment system and the tech about that. If you don't have our app, I very much encourage you to try it. Jane is somewhere here. Right in front of me. So Jane Shutter's our CIO, and some of our other members of our IT team are here. They've done a great job on moving our new app forward. Apple Pay, Google Pay, integrated trip planning. We got some other fun things coming this year. I think some good surprises to move our technology forward. We want to get to an account-based system where wouldn't it be great that transit, all of our bikes, tolls, parking, everything you could think of about mobility is integrated to one account. Some type of logo we'll come up with. That's how we need to work. We need to deal with fair capping, so people on a certain low income thresholds are actually capped, and therefore, from an equity point of view, they're looked after. And otherwise, it's a seamless, frictionless experience to get as many people comfortable as transit. The reason most people like Uber is because you go and touch a button, whether you're in Chicago or Shanghai, Berlin, or Bogota, it's the same app. That's mostly why people do it, because it's easy. In our industry, we've, over time, have done a lot of power control, stupid stuff, and created all these barriers to seamless integration. And I think we're committed at Cap Metro to get out of the past and only be about the customer experience. So I personally don't care who the owner and who the manager and who the technology is. I care about us doing the business model right to make it seamless. Lastly, I think this is my last slide. Planning milestones and next steps. Here's where we are with Project Connect. We've done these work sessions. It says January 9th. The date actually got changed to January 14th. At that work session, we're going to talk about investment options. And basically that means kind of some scenarios. So in our October 30th presentation, we talked about here's the ridership, capital costs, and operating costs of things like the blue line, the orange line, the green line, et cetera. We did those in what's called an independent utility, and that's the FTA, Federal Transit Administration process, to say, if you study the orange line, you have to study it by itself because you can't assume another thing is being built. So that's what we would call baseline modeling. In the next joint work session, we are working up some, I call scenario packages. What would it look like of the blue and orange all together? What would it look like a part of the blue and all the orange, and a couple different things like that? What would it look like with part of tunnel and part this? So we need to answer 3 questions to me when this is all done. What are we building? How are we paying for what we're building? How are we overseeing what we're building? That's simple. We answer all those 3 things in a transparent, good community way. I am more than confident that next November will work out. I made it very clear that our job at staff is not to build a plan that wins an election. And people go, what? That's what we need to happen. I'm more than convinced the way we're going through this process is the right way, and the community now will respond overwhelmingly that we did it the right way, and therefore it will pass. I do not want to gerrymander a process to get votes so we can build transit if it's the wrong transit. We need to build the right stuff, be truthful, say what's important for the future, and be done with it. And I think if we do that the right way, the community will support it. So March, we'll probably get into an exact recommendation of, quote unquote, how we're going to do those 3 things. May, we're hoping policymakers then approve that. And then we believe both policy boards, Cap Metro and the city, will call for some type of vote referendum in November. And then I tell the staff all the time, you think this year is going to be hard? Wait till we actually get money in the bank and we actually got to build stuff. It's a lot easier dreaming than it is doing. So that's my 2 cents. Sorry, Sarah, if I took way too long, but I wanted to give you a little update of what's going on in Cap Metro and what the future looks like. So.
Yeah, I just had some basic tech questions. The first one is about the GPS on the transit and whether or not we're going to increase frequency there and reliability on getting that GPS signal sent out to all the different apps that use it. And then the second one is about the signal priority that supposedly some of the buses use, and I'm curious if that actually works and sort of what percentage of the time it works, because there's not really a way to know whether or not it works or not. So.
Yeah, great question. So question 1, yes, already done. So if you use our app, so we purchased a system called Swiftly. It's kind of I don't want to say a startup in transit, but probably in the adolescent process. And they are really good at both algorithms and doing data in a probably a little more robust way. Secondarily, we had to upgrade our bus fleet to have more cellular service versus radio. So Jane knows this topic well because I was very frustrated with our app about trip planning and the reliability of the times listed. So we went from, Jane and I kind of debated the exact number, we were probably like somewhere in the 60% of being accuracy on that trip arriving. When did we go live with was it August? September? One of you guys got to know the answer. Yeah, September. So we're in our new app. It's pulling in data now from Swiftly off the cell network, which refreshes about every 10 seconds, and it used to refresh every 90 seconds, give or take, off the radio. So now we're into a much higher accuracy of when that's coming. So I think we made an enormous stride there. The second piece, Jane and her team and a group of the city, and we actually a few of us are talking about this today, I think we have still a pretty significant amount of work to do there. Part of it is our street network. Our network kind of, it's not really a grid system, so prioritizing this versus this, sometimes they're you're not getting the value. And the question is, how do you prioritize things that are on schedule, behind schedule, headway managed system, which is the rapid, versus schedule-based system, which is our other routes. So there's a whole integrated team. We have a transit priority work group team between Cap Metro and the city, and that is one of their top priorities of working through how do we improve signal priority, and which corridors, and if we need investments, or do we just need to dial up the priority, those kind of things. So I think more to come in the next year on that.
Hi. Thank you
Hi.
for coming out and talking to us. I appreciate you being here. I have a lot of questions, but I won't go through all of them, but if you could answer some questions for me. The orange line, I'm seeing that say that it's rapid transit. Is that, it's my assumption, is that a bus? Or are you looking at the orange line being a train?
The orange line is rapid transit by definition, and we don't know if it's light rail or BRT yet. That decision hasn't been finalized. The key about rapid transit is that it is 100% dedicated right away. So that will run bus or train. So if you've been to Houston Metro, as an example, and took light rail on Main Street.
Actually, I have. I used to work there.
So that platform that you saw,
Right.
the exact same platform, concrete guideway, no one else in it, signal, not only signal priority, in some areas signal preemption, and all off-board payment, all those types of things. Now the question is it fixed light rail versus kind of a most advanced BRT we could build? We're getting certainly closer to that. I think some of the scenario play that we put out in January will further that conversation, but we're within months at this point of trying to get that decision finalized.
Because the difference between a rail and a bus is traffic. The trains are not going to get into traffic issues. The buses are.
Well, that's sorry, ma'am, that's what I meant. So we are talking dedicated right-of-way, so no one is getting in, you physically won't be able to get into the right-of-way. So it's an isolated right-of-way, whether it's BRT or LRT. So just to clarify, orange and blue line.
Yeah, because at the heart of the problem that we have here is our infrastructure is not, it's my understanding, it's not even it's barely even 10% for the amount of people that we have here. So that's the big problem that we have. We're having a lot of problems with traffic. And I don't see how buses are going to solve that. I live close to Slaughter off of South First now. And the 10 bus is probably one of the best buses to get on. Even that, you have a lot of considerations with time, because the thing about riding a bus is it costs you a lot of time in this city. And if a bus is running late, if you barely miss a bus, the nice thing about the 10 is that it's coming every 15 minutes, so it's not going to be a huge ordeal. But I see that there's this assumption like people just have all this time, because I will sit there and look and see, okay, is it going to be quicker for me to take the bus right now, or is it going to be quicker for me just to drive and to deal with all this stuff?
Yeah. So I get, maybe for sense of a question, I would just say, don't get fixated on the vehicle. It's the guideway is about travel time savings. So if I'm in a bus or a train and there's no one in front of me and they can't get in my infrastructure, like this middle picture is Indianapolis, that is a BRT line with a dedicated right-of-way. So that's what it's all about, dedicated right-of-way. So
Yeah, and
longer
we have
term,
some of that right now.
no, we have transit priority lanes, and they are totally different. So on Guad right now, we have a transit priority lane that people can get in and take a right-hand turn. That's not dedicated right-of-way. Dedicated right-of-way is literally there's bollards or markings off where people can't get into that lane. So regardless of train or bus, you're talking almost minuscule difference in time of travel on an alignment with station placement. So train and bus is really about capacity of a vehicle and overall system, not about the travel time. The key about travel time is getting everyone else out of our way. So you can't relate it to the local bus. These are high capacity rapid transit lines versus local bus.
So we don't have anything set up like that in
Zero.
the city right now?
Zero. The closer we got to the red line.
Okay.
Yep.
You also mentioned, you're new here, and you mentioned that you don't drive. I'm curious as to how do you get around?
I walk and take the bus.
You walk and take the bus. What part of town do you live in?
Well,
Just
I don't know.
curious.
It's getting kind of a little personal, but I
Well,
live downtown,
You live downtown.
and I work on the east side.
Okay.
But
Okay.
yeah, not that
Because-
I live downtown. I'm not trying
Yeah.
to like say I don't. I mean,
Because if you
what's the
live-
question you're getting to? I guess.
If you live downtown, it's not that big of a ordeal. I used to live downtown as
Okay.
well, and I used to it was easier for me to get on my bike to go anywhere.
Yeah.
But I'm really seeing this and seeing this process and the interaction. I'm actually quite alarmed and thinking, oh, we're in big trouble here. Because we have a big traffic problem here, and it's going to get much worse. And what I was hearing you say is you're really excited about the tollways. You're like, it's going to happen. I'm going to tell you right now, the people that live here aren't real excited about the tolls. And it really hasn't helped us a whole lot. And you were saying, years in the future, we're looking at bus type things. I mean, can you imagine? I've spent quite a bit of time in Boston. Can you imagine what Boston or New York would look like if they had the transit that we do here? I mean, we just have a really big problem that's going to need some really big solutions, and I'm not seeing a lot of different stuff here. You mentioned that the ridership has increased by 5%. You've got a card here that says we've got 155 cars coming into Austin new every week, so that's not, we're not growing fast enough to solve the problems, but I hope you guys figure this out, because it's getting to the point where people are starting to leave the city because you can't get around in this city. So
Agree.
I mean, I wish you guys luck, and like I said, thank you for being here and
Yeah.
talking to us.
I encourage you to go
I
to
really
Project
hope,
Connect. Why don't you go to projectconnect.com, look into more stuff, and
I
then
did.
you can
I
stop by
did,
the
and
office
that's
and
why I'm
talk
here
to,
tonight.
talk to staff. So I would suggest, upper limits where I think the upper limit on the investment option is like $9.5 billion. So I would suggest that's relatively bold for a community that's only done $720 million before. So we're doing everything we can. I'm happy to get a shovel in the ground tomorrow if someone has some money and some right of way to give us. So we're looking to really move the transit equation. But maybe for the sake of other questions, Sarah, I don't know if you got.
I think that's a great segue into when the public commentary period is on projectconnect.com or whatever the URL is.
Yeah, so the virtual open house is like this week, right? And articulate why you think it's the reason to go, or if you think of BRT, why, and if you think it's underground, why. So. I have. We have one rail line actually. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I had two questions. The first one is, what consideration did you have around campus and the needs of students on getting around in this overarching theme? And the second is, it gets really hot here in the summer, and so how has weather in these peer cities, weather is quite different often in the summer. What sort of considerations have you had in taking into the fact that it gets really hot here?
Yeah, so I mean, campus, 70,000 people a day on campus. So campus is one of the biggest drivers of mobility in the whole region. I think you can look by that map that major high capacity lines on certainly one side and potentially on the other as well. And again, what's really important, that's why we went through the system of the map, there's an underlying local bus service all throughout the city. These are just the high capacity lines. So if you again went to Boston and their subways, they also move 350-some thousand people a day on the local bus network that feeds into all the other stuff as well. So it's a system. So I would say we've done a lot of engagement with UT. So Jackie's done stuff on the community side, but us from the technical side. So we're doing a lot of work with UT on that. There's no question that the drag is one of the most important key elements that we're going to have to resolve. The second piece, I'm sorry, long day. Oh, weather. So I'm not. I guess what we'd say about that is, no matter where you live, people will say weather's good or bad, right? So people in Philadelphia and Boston walked to the train and bus in the last 3 days in 25 degrees and snow. People here would be like, oh, I wouldn't do that. And then when it's 110 here in July and August, people up there would say, well, why would you, I wouldn't do that. So every climate has its pros and cons. I think our climate is not an issue. So yeah, it's hot. So that means we need great stations with lots of good shade, and I think we need better sidewalk infrastructure with probably better tree canopy, which, like if you go to a place like Singapore, the entire sidewalk infrastructure is covered by trees. So it's not just the transit system, it's the mobility system needs to be more thoughtful about that. But if you go to Phoenix, Phoenix has spent like, I don't know, something with $20 billion in the last 20 years building on a massive transit system. It's hotter in Phoenix than it is here. And I don't care about dry heat. 123 degrees is hot, right? So, I mean, all these other cities, Houston and Dallas, they're up and down the street, depending, I guess, how you look at it. They've done the same kind of thing. So, Miami. So, we just got to be honest and say, what are we trying to do? We're trying to move some people. So,
Thank you. How do you plan to communicate to and incentivize people who live outside of the major Austin metro area to use public transit as opposed to their own vehicles for private transportation?
yeah, I think that's a twofold piece. So one, I think we're doing a pretty good job of talking about our services, and that's why we're basically at full capacity on some of our express routes right now. And that will have to further, and I think we got to continue to build partnerships with people like Pflugerville right now. We're entering a partnership where they want to start running more service. We do contract service for Round Rock. I think the pickup style is going to help in some more suburban areas. As 35 or Mopac South get resolved, I think there's no question there's a bunch of latent demand looking for an express bus service. Secondarily, though, and this is the same in every other city, human nature will dictate a lot of this, which is when the pain is bad, you will switch. So I was going to say something that most people probably are not going to agree. I got to be careful how I say it, I guess, but we are still cheap in Austin. So people go, well, how do you say that? It's very expensive here. It's not expensive compared to the other big cities, right? So why is everyone moving? People go, oh, everyone's moving here from the Bay Area. Well, they're moving here from the Bay Area because the Bay Area is way more expensive and the traffic's way worse. That's why they're moving here, right? Boston, when I left Boston, a parking space sold for $400,000. Parking space, right? We are cheap compared to Boston and New York and Seattle and DC and San Francisco. Doesn't mean we're cheap as we used to be, but we're cheaper. One day that's going to crack and force people to change their mobility. So instead of having a 2-car family, maybe we need 1 car. Instead of having 1 car, we have 0. So the average person spends $900+ a month to have a car. Our bus pass is $41. That equation is better calculated in bigger urban environments. They're used to it. Second part of pain, how long is my commute? If I could take that express bus and it takes me 28 minutes, the exact time from Lakeline to middle of Central Business District or UT every day, and it might take me an hour driving or 20 minutes, the variability, plus it costs me money, I'm going to do that. And the third part, I guess, of that is parking. We're still really cheap on parking. We have an enormous amount of free parking, which is very detrimental to our mobility system, very detrimental. You got people out there saying, oh, we need more parking, that'll solve the problem. Parking is killing us. It's actually causing most of our problems. Way too much cheap parking. And so all those pain points as we become a bigger city, well, the natural thing is I'm going to take transit.
And have you done any calculations so far on how much time a commuter is actually going to save with these rapid transit solutions?
Yeah, so we're still wrapping up some of that. So there's been some analysis done. What's hard is you're comparing current to predictive modeling. So nothing is perfect on models, right? But we're trying to compare current transit and driving solo versus future transit driving solo. So it's not just transit to transit. It's also what would driving look like in 2040 by yourself. And so I've seen some projections that said it would take someone like an hour and 45 minutes to go from Georgetown to downtown. I don't know how accurate that is because I didn't get into that particular piece. But yeah, when we get to a point probably later this winter, you're going to start seeing travel time. You know, this one will take 20 minutes. This will take 40. This one will cost $3. This will cost 15. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, Randy, thanks for coming out. Very informative. So we talked about the tech community here and the importance of the tech community in Austin and around the Austin region. And the lifeblood of the tech community is all about getting the right talent and right workforce, right? So how are you working with the tech community to get invested and help you move forward on your transportation plans and some of the community investments that we need there?
Yeah, great question. So the theme, I think you said, is very important, which is our economy will get strangled if we don't have better mobility, right? And that's happening in other markets. There's no question. Like the Greater Bay Area right now is struggling for their job market because of housing and transportation. There's no question about it. And if we don't do something better in planning, one day we're going to have this amazing city. And what happens if people then start going, I'm leaving? That's not what you, that's Detroit 8 years ago. You don't want that situation. So we got to constantly think about how we manage our growth. To your point about the tech community, well, one, I think being here, appreciate Sarah having us here. We're trying to work closer with like Austin Tech Alliance, and we've had some good collaborative meetings about how Austin Tech Alliance can help get our messaging out, how be a partner in bringing people together. I think we all own a responsibility to move this conversation forward. You know, who the hell's the guy from Boston that's been here 18 months, goes around and tells everyone in the community what they should be doing, right? I can be the technical transit guy, but at the end of the day, this needs to be an organic-led process. And I think one thing the tech community has to do, and you know, this is a real serious conversation, and I appreciate Josh and others that have really kind of established this forum and do a lot of this work. We need the tech community to be really invested in this community. And it's challenging because a lot of our tech community is big corporate tech. And they are challenged to do certain things in certain communities because they're worried about precedent to then, if I do it here, I got to do it in Seattle. If I do it in Seattle, I have to do it in Silicon Valley. So I think, you know, the Apples, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Oracles, we got to figure out a way that they realize the value. And the value is more than just saying, well, we're going to get our employees to take transit. So I think we're doing a lot with that now. We're doing a lot of MetroWorks process where tons of tech workers are actually using transit, much more than I think ever before. But a sense of where they make office decisions, how they build parking in their offices, how they work with us on maybe joint development stuff. So I think you're going to see more and more of that over time. And then I think on the medium to small tech world, I think working with ATA and others to say, A, how do you need to be more involved? And if you believe in this, spread the message. But B, what potential economic opportunities exist? So let's say we spent, whatever, 6, 5, 10, doesn't matter, $1 billion over X period of years to build something out. Outside of, we don't make trains here, we don't make buses here, virtually everything else is money back into our economy. So if you have you care about selling product, whether you're selling concrete to working in tech, you're an electrician, you do uniforms, it doesn't matter. We are going to help drive more of our economy to keep more local dollars here. And I think the other part of that is the possibility for disadvantaged business enterprises, women-owned, minority-owned firms, and the unique talents they might bring to an enterprise like this as well. So you have ideas about how the tech community is more involved? I am all ears 100%. There is not a group that we won't talk to. There's not a group we want to learn from, and there's not a group that we don't want to be out there working with us to get the message out.
This is kind of a specific question, but I'm wondering if we have a bunch of different modalities that people are using, like a circulator to a bus rapid transit to a train. How are the fares going to work? How are people going to pay? And what is it going to cost for somebody who's using a bunch of different parts of this?
Yeah. Why don't we start at the end and work our way back? I have no idea what it's going to cost. Well, in all fairness, right? Because we don't even know what we're building yet. Sure. And more importantly, what it costs to use a service in 2028 is not going to be what it costs today. So if I said it's going to be $4 a trip, is that go, oh my God, $4? But is $4 in 2028 the right price? I don't know. So okay. I wouldn't get overly concentrated on the fare. The fare will be very inexpensive compared to ever being in a car. I will say we are like the cheapest fare in America. Like Austin, Cap Metro, we have, if we're not the lowest of the top 50 systems, I don't know which one would be lower than us from a fare point of view. We are incredibly, incredibly cheap. Vegas would be like over like 100% more than us per fare, as a good example. So we are very, very cheap. How are you going to pay? There's no question it's going to be integrated, frictionless technology. So we are actually at a point where by next summer, we will have, I think it's next summer, we will have onboard validators on every one of our buses, front and back door. So you'll just take your app, walk on. That's on only local bus, let alone the high capacity stuff. We want to have much more integrated, seamless technology with parking, with bikes. We're working on something with the city to talk about how bicycle needs to be way more integrated to the mobility network. And what would it look like to maybe have bikes and transit all together in a pass? You know, what would it look like to have scooters? Whatever scooters maybe survive or don't survive, right? That market is hard to tell what's going to happen there yet. That's the future of mobility. Cap Metro, and I've said this a lot to staff, we are not a transit authority. We're a mobility authority. And our industry is transitioning to be the mobility operator. So the city is a facilitator of transportation. We are an operator of transportation. And we need to not worry about operating buses, paratransit vehicles, or rail. We should operate whatever we need to operate to move people around our community. So I think you're going to see just a huge advance in that. But I really, if you haven't downloaded it, you should check out our app. I think the average person will be...
I use it, yeah.
Oh, do you? Okay, I appreciate that. I think it's a pretty good app for the type of system we're running today. And what would it look like to have way more validation, digital validators? We have some transit ticket vending machines that we're upgrading that are going into key places. How to draw less cash, more cash off the system, which moves the buses a lot faster. We're going to be doing a lot more Metro work stuff where a company could actually put out 500 passes. They control the email distribution list and send it out to everyone. So we're already doing that. You guys integrated that about 5-6 months ago. So the volume of stuff this tech team is doing, like, and IT is always names the department. These guys are a tech team, and we are really a good tech company, and we're becoming more of a tech company by the day. So I'm really proud. I'll give the kudos to I'm giving the kudos to the Cap Metro team. Give them some love. So good question.
We have time for one more. You had your hand up.
2 questions.
You had one more, she said.
Maybe I'll wrap it up. I was very impressed by the ridership increases in Manor.
Yeah.
Would that be the result of changing from a fixed route, fixed schedule model to an on-demand, point-to-point model?
Yes, we believe so, yep.
Okay. The other question is, I've reviewed the the work session documents, and where do you propose to get the operating funds to run Project Connect? It's shown to be about $150 million, which is more than half of your sales tax take that operates our whole Capital Metro system here. Where is that going to come from, since you have no ability to levy taxes, run bonds, or take debt? That's a tremendous amount of money to operate this system. Where's it going to come from?
So I think in the January 14th work session, you'll see a little bit more information on that. The team is working pretty heavily, city staff and our staff, on, I would call them investment options. So they are, here's an option, here's an option, here's an option, and what pros and cons of each one of those investment options are, both capital and operating. So I think you'll see a lot more of that in the mid-January work session. So, and not all of it is at the same time. So there's obviously a scale as things come online, and then you got to compare things like our sales tax growth, our fare revenue growth, what our federal apportionment growth numbers look like, because as we grow as an area, plus as our services grow, we would get actually more formula funds. What different city options exist. There's a whole bunch, so it's going to be a menu of things that staff doesn't make policy decisions. We present technical options for policymakers to make. So we think that there are definite options out there that would both meet capital and operating needs. We just have to determine as a community, are those the investments we want to do?
And you expect federal government to fund 40% of the capital investment?
We're making the 40% assumption on the capital investment grant program, yes.
Would you be willing to put a contingency into the ballot language so that we don't get hung with an unfunded mandate, the taxpayers in Austin, that would say, unless we get the matching funds from the federal government, we will not go forward because we're not going to have the money if you're counting on a huge percentage like that. Would you be supportive of putting that in the ballot language?
Well, let's be clear, I don't write ballot language, so I'm not a policymaker.
Would you support it?
Well, I don't think it's my position to support ballot language because I specifically don't get into political items. I think that not only is wrong, I think it's probably illegal. What I would say is this: I think your comment is a very valid comment, and policymakers should be very cognizant of that comment. And I think most of the ones that are involved in this do realize that. I think your real point is it's a given that without some federal money, we're not going to be able to build this, or we got to build a lot less of it. So, I mean, you can't just say 40% isn't there. We're going to need the money, or we're going to build a lot less stuff. So I wouldn't get into the wordsmithing on the legalities of that, but I think your point is very valid that we need all the available sources to do what we're talking about doing.
Yeah, well, that's such a huge number. Anyone familiar with FAST and the CIG funding knows that it's pretty much absorbed, and once all of the costs are extracted, it's about $2.5 billion a year. And you have a list of folks up there, and they're tapping that pretty heavily. I think it's important that people also realize that most of those are doing a sales tax, which you guys can't do because of the state law on taxation here. And, you know, the LA thing, that's almost all a sales tax. The Seattle, the Sound Transit, sales tax, and a few other things.
Seattle was a blend. Seattle was a blend of multiple.
Yes, it's a blend.
Blend of multiple things. Indianapolis is a blend of multiple things. But yeah, a majority of transit referendums have been sales tax. Certainly not all of them. And again, I would not get into what the right taxing method is. I certainly come from the Northeast, so my views on taxes probably don't align necessarily with most people down this way. But I'll just leave it at this: if you want stuff, you got to pay for it. And either we want stuff or we don't. And I'm just another voter. And I know which way that if the option comes, I'll be going. Thanks a lot for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you to Cap Metro, Randy, Jackie. Got your coin. I want to say thank you to Meridian Hive for being here. Thank you for providing us this delicious mead, which I have never had before. It's so good. And to Capital Factory for donating the space, as usual. Thank you for coming tonight. I run Austin Tech Alliance. It is a one-person show made possible by all of you, all of my members. For more information or to join, go to austintech.org. I'm also really active on all our social media. So please join. Please come to all of our future events. I send out a newsletter every 2 weeks. We have a policy agenda that includes mobility and transportation that I will be advocating for in 2020. If anybody needs to register to vote, see me. Does anybody need to register to vote? Okay, cool. Oh, see this guy in the orange hat if you need to register to vote? And thank you for being here. And please eat all the food.